Now when he saw this pose, he shrank half of his head, called, "Mom," tremblingly, and then called, "Big brother," with a smile. Noah Wilson didn't seem to hear him and ignored him. Old Mrs. Wilson nodded lightly. Jacob asked tentatively, "Mom, you called me today? Let me ask you, what's the matter with Thompson's villa?" Old Mrs. Wilson asked coldly. Jacob said quickly, "That villa was given to Charlie by President White. Charlie helped him see feng shui before." "Telling the feng shui?" Harold sneered, and said in a weird manner, "If you look at feng shui, you can see a luxurious mansion. All of us in the Wilson family should stop working, and we will all deceive to cheat money." There was a low laughter in the hall. Listening to the ridicule of the relatives, Jacob was embarrassed and could only laugh. On the contrary, Noah laughed twice, and made a rounding up. "Mom, no matter what Charlie is, President White has also explained it. It is indeed a gift for him. This matter is also considered to be clear. Young brother, there is no need to explain." Jacob gave his eldest brother a grateful look, somewhat flattered. The eldest brother usually dismissed himself at all, but it was unprecedented to help him speak today. Noah smiled slightly and turned to Mrs. Wilson and said, "Mom, you don't need to ask how the villa came. Anyway, Mr. White himself said that it was given to Charlie, so we have nothing to worry about." "Yeah." Mrs. Wilson nodded and said to Jacob, "Jack, your eldest brother wants to marry High Boy into Dong family. It's Harold marrying Elsa from the Dong family. What do you think of this matter?" "This is a good thing," Jacob said with a smile. "The Dong family is a well-known family in the capital. If we can get married with the Dong family, it will also help our Wilson family." "A good thing is a good thing," Mrs. Wilson sighed with a long sigh. "But, our family, compared with Dong's family, that's really a far cry. Even if your eldest brother has this heart, he doesn't have the face to talk to Dong's family." Jacob nodded seriously and said the truth. "Mom, to tell the truth, I also think Elsa should not look towards this favorably." Harold's expression was extremely ugly, and he blurted out, "Uncle, what do you mean by this?" Only then did Jacob realize that he had said something wrong, and hurriedly changed his words. "Oh, I didn't mean that. I meant to say that compared with the Dong family, our Wilson family is indeed far behind." Old Mrs. Wilson said indifferently, "People depend on clothes, and Buddha depends on gold. If we live in the best villa in Orus Hill, after the Dong family comes, we can leave a good impression." Jacob asked in surprise, "Mom, are you going to change houses?" Old Mrs. Wilson said lightly, "I want to change to a better one, but unfortunately I don't have that much money." When Jacob heard this, he hurriedly said, "If Mom needs money, I still have $1 million." Old Mrs. Wilson coldly snorted. "A villa can be tens of millions or hundreds of millions at every turn. Is $1 million enough?" With that, she deliberately changed her conversation and said, "Jack, doesn't your family have a ready-made villa in Thompson?" "Yes." Jacob didn't know, so he said blankly, "What's wrong? What's the matter?" The old Mrs. Wilson looked upset, and said, "I am your mother. You can bear to see me living in this old house for so many years? Now that you have a Thompson first-class villa, shouldn't you bring it here? Honor me as a mother, let me live in that villa first?" Jacob was taken aback for a moment, and hurriedly said, "Mom, the villa was given to Charlie by the White family, not for me." The old Mrs. Wilson became impatient, and she was too lazy to conceal it, and said directly, "Charlie is the son-in-law of the Wilson family, and the villa the White family gave him must also belong to the Wilson family. As the head of the Wilson family, don't I have the right yet? Do you live in Wilson's villa?" Charlie next to him sneered slightly. He didn't say a word just now, just knowing that there must be nothing good about this family gathering today. It turned out that the Lady Wilson just wanted his villa. Jacob understood now, sweating even more anxiously, stammering speechless, looking back at Charlie, eyes full of embarrassment. Noah Wilson said triumphantly, "Jack, you are Charlie's father-in-law. If he dares not listen to what you say, isn't he too arrogant at home? What status do you have?" "That's right." Mrs. Wilson nodded in satisfaction, her eyes full of greed. She couldn't help feeling the excitement deep in her heart when she thought of living in the big villa of Thompson community. Claire couldn't help it, and said coldly, "Grandma, the villa is not owned by our Wilson family. If you want to take the villa, you have to ask Charlie's opinion. If Charlie is unwilling to give it, no one is qualified to ask for it." Old Mrs. Wilson frowned and looked at Claire, feeling very unhappy in her heart. "Talking." The old Mrs. Wilson looked at Charlie coldly, and said unceremoniously, "This villa was given by the White family. You are just a live-in son-in-law, and you are not qualified to enjoy it. Tomorrow you go to the company's finance department to receive $100,000, your reward for dedicating the villa." The Lady Wilson's command-like tone gave no room for discussion. Noah said, "Charlie, $100,000 is a lot. You are a waste of money. I guess you have never seen so much money." Charlie slowly raised his head and sneered from his nostrils. "For $100,000, you want to forcefully buy a villa worth more than $130 million in Thompson? Old Mrs. Wilson, you are too shameless." His voice rang loudly and clearly reached the ears of everyone present. The crowd was shocked, and the entire hall was suddenly silent. All eyes were fixed on Charlie. Surprised. Shock. Incredible. Claire was also shocked. She didn't expect Charlie to be so tough.